How can you tell when it's your body's hormones or metabolism causing stubborn weight gain and not just a lack of willpower?
It is never, and I rarely use this word, but it is never a lack of willpower. Full stop. None of you in our Happy Healthy Hub when this question came up, and none of you listening lack willpower. You're simply using this finite resource in other places and not doing things throughout the day that replenish this finite resource. And then we think that we're failing as a human, that it's some sort of moral failure. Welcome to Salad with a Side of Fries. I'm your host, Jenn, talking wellness and weight loss for real life. We're here to clear up the myths, misinformation, bad science, and marketing to teach you how to eat and how to cheat. Are you ready? I'm having salad with a side of fries. Hey friend, welcome back to Salad with a Side of Fries. I'm your host and health coach, Jenn, here with you every week for Wellness Without the Weirdness. And joining me today is a new voice for all of you with a familiar name. My friend Jennifer is here with us. Jennifer, welcome officially to Salad with a Side of Fries.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Yeah. So filling everybody in, we met through networking. And I guess the rest, as they say, is history.
Good history.
Right. Exactly. And now you're here. And I'm so grateful that you're here with us because we have a Q&A episode today. And this one features questions from our Happy Healthy Hub. So friends, if you liked this episode today, join us over in the hub. This is the stuff that happens all the time over there. And speaking of which, I suppose let's tell our members what they're getting this week, and then we'll jump into those questions. Sound good?
Great. Yeah, let's do it.
Awesome. All right, members, your recipe this week is for burger bowls. It's all the flavors you love from a burger, even a special sauce. So you get all of that in this recipe. And they're pretty easy to make. I think great for the whole family. Like you could even do like a toppings bar kind of a thing if you wanted to with it.
Cute. Yeah.
Right? So if you want this recipe, be sure you're a member of the Happy Healthy Hub. You'll go to asaladwithasideoffries.com/membership for just $12 a month. Or by the way, you can prepay a year and you get 2 months free. So you get weekly recipes, curated articles, discounts from me and our partners, expert interview episodes in full video, including some behind the scenes content, access to the community board where we can interact, ask and answer questions, and so much more. So this is really the next best thing to working with me and my signature 12-week coaching program. If you're ready to level up your health and support this podcast in the process so we can keep doing this together every week, go to asaladwithasideoffries.com/membership. Or there's a link in the episode notes because that's easier than remembering the whole long URL. From there, you click subscribe now and follow the prompts to enter your payment info, create your login to access the hub, and then you'll get this week's recipe for burger bowls.
Sounds delicious.
I know. It makes me hungry now.
Yeah.
All right, Jennifer, let's start with the first question. Oh, by the way, I should tell everybody. So like I said, all these questions came from our Happy Healthy Hub. I removed the names so that all of that is anonymized for the general public. But here we go. Okay, hit me with the first one.
All right, here we go. The first question was, I really like your podcast and the Happy Healthy Hub. I am looking for your input on cholesterol. I do not want to take a statin and was wondering if there was another way to improve cholesterol. I would like to improve my health using diet in natural ways.
I love this. First of all, I respect everybody wanting to use lifestyle to make these adjustments. I think, listen, there are certainly times where statins may be necessary. Some of us are genetically really good makers of cholesterol. Some of us are really good transporters of cholesterol. So there are some times where a statin drug might still make sense. But lifestyle factors can be absolutely tremendous for this. So one of the biggest things that we see over and over, and I've seen this in my practice, is our cholesterol is really tied to sugar way more than it is fat. And many of us have been told that it's all about fat.
Yeah, I had no idea.
Right. And it's not really. So by the way, episodes to go back to, we have every February, I basically do a heart health episode. So in all of those, we really talk about, there's one, I think it's called It Takes Heart. is the first one I did. And we go through all of these kinds of things and even understanding what the different pieces of your lab work mean. But primarily, so if we're looking to make a difference in our cholesterol, we want to, interestingly, increase our omega-3s. That's going to help with our HDL, high-density lipoprotein, the quote-unquote good cholesterol. We want to minimize sugar, grains, and starches.
Okay. The omegas are like fishes, right?
Yep,
Okay.
exactly. And especially like the deep sea fish.
Mm-hmm.
And when we're looking in this capacity to really move the numbers, this is where we want to make those nutrition choices and probably supplementation as well.
Mm-hmm.
When it comes to an omega-3 supplement, we have a Q&A on supplements that we've done years ago. But you want an omega-3 that's made from sardines or anchovies, like very deep sea fish.
Mm.
You want it to be made in the US and cold pressed. You want to be careful that there isn't water in there or other things. You want to make sure that it's DHA and EPA in order to get those heart health benefits from the omegas. So flax can be great, but we don't see the same impact specifically on heart health with flax and some of the plant-based omegas. And then a therapeutic dose is more in the like 3 to 6 grams per day or 3,000 to 6,000 milligrams a day. So especially like this is one where more expensive doesn't mean better, but this is one where I wouldn't necessarily choose the most inexpensive option. Often that means it's jeopardized ingredients or such a small dose that we're not really getting the benefit. And then I would also emphasize fiber and specifically soluble fiber. So soluble fiber is the kind that creates almost like this gel-like substance. And so if we think of that, just to remind ourselves, it's almost like the cholesterol can get stuck in that soluble fiber to be eliminated from our system. That's not exactly how it works, but the visual helps me remember. And you can even just Google like tons of vegetables that you're probably already eating give you that soluble fiber.
Yeah.
So lots we can do. And then, of course, movement, exercise, activity. And by the way, if anybody is on a statin drug, coenzyme Q10 is an absolute must. And I think we talked about that in our supplement episodes or in, our other heart health
So
episodes.
those two things together, why is CoQ10 so important to the omega?
So the way a statin drug works is that it blocks the body's own production of cholesterol. By the way, your body produces cholesterol. Your body maintains about 50 grams of cholesterol at all times. So the way a statin drug manages, in air quotes, manages cholesterol is that it blocks the body's production of cholesterol. That same pathway that creates cholesterol creates coenzyme Q10. Coenzyme Q10 is the fuel for our mitochondria. Mitochondria, 7th grade science, powerhouse, battery pack of the cell. Well, muscle cells have lots of mitochondria because they need a lot of energy. Well, your heart is a giant, very important muscle. And so if we're blocking the body's production of CoQ10, which is the fuel for our muscle cells, and what's your heart if not a muscle?
Mm-hmm.
That's therefore a problem. So CoQ10 is a must for anybody on a statin. I sort of have a thing with statins, so this is my soapbox moment. So I say this with love and compassion and respect, but statins, and I don't remember the stats offhand, which I should probably collect again the updated data to get on my soapbox, but basically like a majority of adults are on a statin drug, and yet cardiovascular disease is still one of the top causes of death in this country, especially in women. Yeah. But part of that is because there's such a lack of education around like signs of heart disease in women because it's different than with men, especially around a heart attack and stress and that kind of stuff. But a majority of people are on a statin drug, and yet cardiovascular disease is still the top cause of death. So we have a disconnect between the medications that we're taking and the reality of the outcomes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
that's alarming. All right. So the omegas reduce sugar, fiber, soluble fiber.
Yeah. So we're going to minimize sugar, starches, and grains. Again, all of that is turning into sugar quickly and easily in the system.
Okay.
Yeah. And then, like we said, the omegas, right? We're going to increase our healthy fats and fiber, that soluble fiber especially.
Okay.
Awesome.
So the next
Excellent.
question, I've been doing a lot of work to heal my gut over the past couple of years. How can I tell if I have healed my leaky gut?
Okay, so when this question was submitted, I asked a bunch of follow-up questions. So some of my questions were like, what symptoms were you experiencing before? Have those things gotten any better? Are you able to tolerate foods that you couldn't tolerate before? So this person replied and said, I've been dealing with loose stool, urgent bowel movements, had H. pylori, smelly gas, no other real symptoms in the digestive realm that I can think of. It's been over a year, but I also had a surgery with antibiotic and pain meds in there, plus years of other insults like heavy sucralose use, Advil use. I would take 4 at a time for sinus headaches or TMJ issues, diet soda, almost annual antibiotic for different things, including multiple surgeries, not to mention the spinal meningitis at 6 weeks old. So my gut has been wrecked since I was very young. But I also had an iron stomach, so I never really noticed anything. Nothing bothered me, including the antibiotics, like some would experience. So I also have more questions, right? So part of it is then, how are those symptoms now? Did we do any testing to confirm the leaky gut? Because some of those symptoms aren't necessarily specific to leaky gut. It's more reading to me as dysbiosis. And so over the years, I asked questions about what other interventions they used for how long and how far into this, especially this last year, year and a half, was that surgery. So long story short, there's a lot of insults to our systems these days, but I also think part of the challenge with social media and, you know, how much we all talk about these things, I think there's an assumption that, like, if we have anything, well, it must be leaky gut, you know, and we can sort of jump to these things where most of us are in a place where it's a spectrum and we're not quite at that extreme, but maybe we're making our way there, right? So some of the things, like I said before, like, are you able to tolerate foods that you couldn't before? What are you noticing on a daily basis? Are you still experiencing those same symptoms, or have you found some relief? And the best thing is really, we want to test. This is where, if we do have some of these concerns, testing can be really helpful. So specifically, we need the functional lab testing. Zonulin is one of those that's looking at, you know, kind of that gut lining. So zonulin is a protein that acts almost like the gatekeeper for these tight junctions in the intestinal wall, right? So it's the intestinal epithelial cells. And so zonulin is sort of like that junction between these cells. If we have elevated levels of zonulin, or if there's, you know, anti-zonulin antibodies, it tends to indicate that these junctions have loosened, right? That's where we're getting to that leaky gut. So zonulin is one that I would, you know, test for. There's also some other tests depending on if you're doing a stool test or, you know, other kinds of testing. But like secretory IgA is another one that gives us an indication of sort of that immune function of that mucosal barrier as well. So I would say, are you able to tolerate things? Are you noticing a difference? And connecting the dots, maybe it is time to test, especially if you did a test before and then you've gone through a massive protocol. It's worth testing again to see if we've improved, if we're moving in the direction that we're looking for.
So 2 questions in reference to that. The first, the zonulin thing, like, what would cause that breakdown? Would that to be too high, or whichever way you had said. And the second thing is leaky gut completely reversible once you have it, or is it the sort of something that you can just improve upon?
So it depends who you ask. In my experience, I have seen leaky gut completely reverse. And what ends up happening is it ends up being caused by repeated assaults to the digestive system, to the intestines. So if you're like the antibiotics that kill lots of bacteria, the healthy bacteria and the not, you know, like the bad bacteria, in air quotes, for lack of a better word, right? If we're eating things that we are allergic to, by the way, like autoimmune tends to happen, like autoimmune is connected to leaky gut. So If we have a diagnosis of something that's autoimmune, then we want to start to look at the gut and that intestinal wall permeability. And you want it like that zonulin, right? You want some things to go back and forth there. That's part of absorbing nutrients. But we want to make sure that the things that we don't want going directly into our bloodstream don't go there.
Yeah.
Right? So that's why it modulates that permeability. A lot of times, it's mostly from assaults, whether it's toxins, things that disrupt the microbiome, like she talked about in her question with a lot of the sweeteners and the other pharmaceuticals or over-the-counter things, that medication, all of that kind of stuff can sort of assault the intestines.
Okay.
Yeah, good questions.
All right. Next question here we have is, how do you handle food noise? I love this question.
Yeah. And this is one where it's so personal because part of the question is, well, what is your food noise about? Is it that you're just constantly thinking about food, that like you're eating and planning the next meal? Is it that you're trying to figure out what you're allowed to eat or what you quote unquote should eat? Is it that there's some food around you and it has a voice and it's calling your name, right? Most of the time, a lot of those pieces connect to restriction.
Like dieting, right? Like, you're not
Exactly.
supposed to. Okay.
Exactly. So if we're constantly living under rules, odds are you're going to have more food noise.
Mm.
So a piece of it is noticing the situations where it's louder, and then maybe we can work on those situations and then notice where you're restricting. Are you really under eating? Most of the time, that food noise is real loud when we are under eating and when we are under eating protein, right? Like that dessert plate has a loud voice when we have not had enough to eat, and specifically not enough protein in our day, and especially early in the day.
Early in the day, more protein earlier in the day.
Well, generally, food noise I hear a lot about, especially with nighttime eating or dinner events or things where we're sort of surrounded by food that's out and available,
Yeah.
And a lot of times what happens in the evening, like that nighttime eating, is directly connected to undereating in the first half of the day.
That's interesting.
So I feel like we could do an entire episode on food noise. I will add it to my list.
I love it.
And it's such a conversation these days, especially with all the GLP-1s, because it's the primary thing that people talk about is that food noise goes away, or at least it gets a lot quieter. And part of that is a function of satiety.
Yeah.
So if we're looking at creating satiety to help with that food noise, it's the stuff I talk about all the time: protein, fiber, quality fat throughout the day, starting within an hour to 90 minutes of waking up, and eating regularly. That food noise can go away in other ways.
I love that you had made that connection to the protein, because that, for me, one thing is when my food noise starts and I start like going into this like weird, like, I'm like, what am I going to eat place? Or like I start to feel off, but I'm like, but I've eaten today. What's my problem? I have in the last year connected that directly to me not eating enough protein. And my husband has pointed it out as well, because I think I've said it out loud a couple times, and he's like, what have you eaten though today? And I'm like, I think about it and I'm like, oh my gosh, I need some proteins. And once I get I have like chicken cutlets in the house all the time.
Yep.
That's what I do. I'll eat a chicken cutlet. I'm feeling better quick. So I really like
Exactly.
the validation of that too.
Awesome. All right, moving right along.
How can you tell when it's your body's hormones or metabolism causing stubborn weight gain and not just a lack of willpower?
I love this. It is never, and I rarely use this word, but it is never a lack of willpower. Full stop.
Never.
Never. None of you in our Happy Healthy Hub when this question came up, and none of you listening lack willpower. You're simply using this finite resource in other places and not doing things throughout the day that replenish this finite resource. And then we think that we're failing as a human, that it's some sort of moral failure, that we ate the thing that this morning said we didn't want to eat.
So why are we making that choice, right? Like, we know we shouldn't, right? So I guess that's why we're so quick to blame ourselves. Like, I have no willpower. Like, what's wrong with me?
Exactly. So I encourage everybody, willpower won't power is the episode where we did a massive deep dive into willpower. All of those, it's also a chapter in the book, Uncomplicating Wellness, but I describe willpower like a refillable cup. So understanding what are all the things that drink from the cup and what are all the things that replenish that cup. And so if we can build our day to ensure that over the course of the day, we're replenishing that willpower, right? We're doing things that add to that cup and being aware of the things that are using that cup, then we can start to make some more intentional choices. But it is not that anybody here doesn't have willpower. You're just using it in other places. So in all of the research on willpower, those who use it most effectively use it upstream, meaning they use it to create the habit. And then over time, the more that's habitual, the less things require willpower in your day, the more you have willpower left in that cup for those moments when you need it. The question about hormones or metabolism, it's funny. It's a difficult piece because it's both of those things always. There are hormones connected to hunger and satiety. Insulin, blood sugar, leptin, ghrelin, yes, glucagon-like peptide, right? Like all of these pieces connect and they are hormones and metabolism. And then there's also the hormones we think of in terms of, like estrogen and progesterone and testosterone. And so it's always hormones or metabolism in that function, and it is never willpower. And even if we think about, I need to metabolism wise, like, I need more muscle, I need more movement. Okay, yes, it's in there, right? Like it's always those two things. Now, what your best next step is very personal. And that's where you want to ask yourself some questions. You want to get some guidance. Uncomplicating Wellness is a great resource. Or, by the way, I don't know if everybody realizes this. In the episode notes to every single episode of Salad with a Side of Fries is a link where you can fill out a questionnaire and get a free menu plan.
Ooh.
All right, next one.
Number 5, I need help with my energy. I'm dragging out of bed. I need coffee to function. I have no energy.
Okay, so I will add a little bit of color because this person did share that they are a bit of a night owl. And specifically, they wanted to know the best thing to do to wake up with energy. The best thing we can do to wake up with energy takes time for us to get there. Waking up every day at the same time. Ideally, over time, going to bed at the same time every night. In the morning, when we wake up at the same time every day, first morning light to the eyeballs. This is setting your circadian rhythm. This is setting all those clocks, like 10 minutes outside in the morning. Unbelievable for energy. And then we want to eat some food before we have that coffee and make sure that we're leaving that coffee behind by late morning. So especially for all the night owls, ideally, especially if we want to learn to wake up with energy, we don't want to use caffeine or stimulants later in the day to help with that night owl energy, because that's going to then impact our mornings.
Yeah, makes sense. All right. Why do I feel hungrier throughout the day when I eat only healthy meals?
This is so cute. Like everything, it kind of depends. Part of it is probably that your body is getting things it knows how to use, so it's using them. Probably you're potentially under-eating when we think we're being quote unquote healthy.
Yeah.
Remember a serving size of protein for a biologically female body is your whole hand. That's 4 to 6 ounces. Male body, same thing, your whole hand. That's 6 to 8 ounces. And then a snack is 2 to 3 ounces. So a snack is your palm or less. And depending on when this person grew up, if you grew up when I grew up and we were told in the era of eat less, move more, we were told that a serving of protein was the palm of your hand. That's 3 ounces. If that's what you're eating when you feel like you're being quote unquote healthy, you are 100% under eating. And so that's probably leading to also feeling hungrier. And a lot of times I think too, when we feel like we're eating healthier meals, it's also connected to more activity. And that increase in activity, increase in burn, increase in muscle, and your muscle using fuel can also make us feel hungrier through the day.
Yeah, the whole like less isn't necessarily evil.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Next one.
How do I stop craving sugar right after dinner?
Oh, I love this. And some of this is just habit, right? Some of it is like we have this association of finished food, something sweet.
Yeah.
And especially if it's right after dinner, that tends to be that association or something that we're trying to use to signal the end of the meal. And that is a little bit different than what we were talking about before of nighttime eating, where maybe you had dinner, you were satisfied, you were done, and then an hour or two later, you're back in the kitchen going, I need something else. So this idea of something sweet right after is much more a taste bud thing and a habit or an association. So like everything, it's a process. So the first thing we like to do, or that I recommend people do, is just simply switch what you're eating as your something sweet. So could we still finish the meal with something sweet and have it be something that adds some kind of nutrition? So is it berries? Is it a small piece of dark chocolate? Right? Let's just switch to something that is nutrient dense or more nutrient dense than the something sweet we used to have.
So not the cannoli.
Right. I mean, don't get me wrong. I love a cannoli.
Yeah.
Everybody can tell you're Italian from Long Island with your cannoli.
Yeah. Can't help it.
I know. And you're not cold cuts. You're
My chicken cutlets in the house.
Yeah, thank you. The chicken cutlets.
that
Yeah,
was something
it's such
everybody
a New York
did.
thing.
I
So New
found
York.
out like pretty recently it's not something everybody does. I was like, what? That's so weird. You don't spend all a Sunday making chicken cutlets? I don't understand.
So first piece is simply switch what you're having sweet at the end of your meal, and then just decide that it's not that big of a deal, right? If what we're enjoying, because again, if what we're having is a little fruit to end our meal, go, like God, right? Be good. Onward. You know, we can pick our battles here. Over time, especially as you beef up the protein, especially as you start to eat more, maybe then you opt for the next thing to help start to signal the end of your meal. Maybe you do tea. Maybe you do warm water with lemon. And we switch the thing that is signaling the end of the meal.
Does the warm water with lemon, is that, because I've heard that also before bedtime, does that also help with maybe that energy thing, like signaling the end of the meal, like helping with like the going to sleep better at a more consistent time?
Maybe, right? Certainly having a bedtime routine.
Yeah.
And so maybe part of your bedtime routine is sort of sipping something warm and getting cozy. And warm water with lemon is really about the gallbladder. So a lot of times people recommend starting the day with that. I find sometimes too, it's maybe a little bit of like a digestive a little. So especially if I like when I'm on vacation and we have a big meal or whatever, you know, sometimes having a warm water with lemon when other people are having coffee at the end of a meal is helpful. And so maybe, right, it's switching from something that it's still giving us that sort of taste and flavor post-meal as an intermediary step between the food sweet thing and transitioning to something not food related at all. But that might be the next step in your progression. And then after that, maybe it's transitioning to something that's not food related at all. Like what's something else that you could do? Like maybe it is sort of a little habitual ritual thing the end of a meal, or checking in on the day with yourself, or getting something together for the next day, or whatever it is. Like you can sort of progress in that. Okay. I think we let those sink in. Let's pause here to highlight our partner for this episode, and then we're going to come back with more questions. And so some of these questions coming up, by the way, are more about like me and my routine and personal preferences and my thoughts on things. So if you're curious about that, stick with us. Let me ask you something. Have you ever done, in air quotes, all the right things for your health and still simply just felt confused or frustrated, or like, frankly, it just shouldn't be this hard? And it can feel like you're maybe constantly starting over, waiting for whatever you're doing to finally click or stick. And that stuck feeling, it's not a motivation problem. It's definitely not a willpower issue. It's simply what happens when health is built on rules instead of understanding. And that's exactly why I wrote Uncomplicating Wellness. Not to tell you what to eat or how to move or what to eliminate, rather to help you understand how to think about wellness for yourself. What matters, what doesn't, and how to stop outsourcing all of your trust. It's science, it's context and sanity, certainly without pressure to do everything perfectly. If you want wellness to feel clearer, calmer, and more sustainable, this book is for you. So text the word book, B-O-O-K, to 833-801-0500 to learn more. Again, text the word book, B-O-O-K, to 833-801-0500. Okay, Jennifer, next question.
What's the easiest area of life to change when wanting to become better? Nutrition, exercise, or health?
Well, I think all of these lead to health, and I can't give an answer. What I said to this person is, you know whether the nutrition piece or the movement piece is easier for you to start with. The most important piece is to start, not really where we start. So for some people, it might be the movement piece. For some people, it might be the nutrition or food choices piece. I will say in my coaching program, in this 12-week curriculum, we start with the nutrition and we add the movement, and we don't talk about movement till almost a month in. So if that puts it in perspective.
Okay.
All right.
How
Next
do
one.
you create a routine that doesn't feel restrictive?
I love this. So if your routine is feeling restrictive, let's decide that it's not a routine, it's rules. You're living by rules. Let's also consider habits versus routine. So to me, when I think of the word routine, it's the same thing every day.
Yeah.
Do you think of that word the same way? Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, I grew up a dancer. A dance routine was the same steps in the same order.
Same thing we did over and over.
Right.
Learned it that way.
Exactly.
Okay.
Habits are things that happen all the time. So I have a habit of moving my body. Some days it's in the morning. Some days it's in the middle of the day. Some days it's later in the day. Some days I do this activity in my apartment. Some days I do a different activity at a studio, right? If what you're feeling feels restrictive, recognize that it's rules, not habits. So what's the habit that you're looking to create? And how do we simply make sure that that happens every day? So, restrictive in the food sense, are we only eating the same 5 foods, right? That's rules more likely than it is a habit of healthful eating, right? A habit of healthful eating that says I eat tons of vegetables is not I eat cucumbers, carrots, and tomatoes every single day. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally.
And the other thing, I was interviewed for the Mayo Clinic's podcast called On Nutrition, and we talked a lot about habits. And a similar question to this came up, and it's funny. So that interview was after this question came in. And when they asked me the question, it was sort of like, what's the secret to making habits stick? Was kind of the thing. And my answer was somewhat ironic, but the answer is flexibility. Right.
So be forgiving to yourself when you're not 100% in it.
It's flexibility is about, it doesn't have to look like a Xerox copy. It's just that it's still there.
Okay.
Right. And yes, flexibility, we don't have to be 1,000% or a 0.
Yeah.
Maybe today, what I had the capacity for was 10 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
It's also our health, going back to the previous question, our health outcomes, everything in our lives is a function of what we do most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
So think about your most of the time.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. All right.
What are your go-to tips for meal prepping cooking so it's more convenient than getting takeout?
I laugh because I am the takeout queen, but some of my go-tos, well, first of all, in my head, I think about it as making food, not cooking. Okay. Like I can make food, I can put something together. I don't necessarily think of it as quote unquote cooking. So sometimes that means I'm buying the vegetables already cut up. I did at one time in my life have like this vision of going to culinary school. So I enjoy like chopping and cutting and whatever. So sometimes I purposely buy them not already cut up. It just sort of depends what's going on. Or sometimes what vegetable it is, you know. I will say they last longer when you buy them whole and cut them yourself. But a rotisserie chicken, great. The day I get it from the grocery store, I also don't like skin and bones. We're learning a lot about Jen today.
Yeah.
I don't like skin or bones. So the day I get it home from the grocery store, it is completely taken apart. And now it's ready for me to pull a piece and heat it up, throw it into something I'm already making. A jar of tomato sauce. So I like the Rayo's, making sure that it doesn't have any sugar in it or whatever, right? But a jar of tomato sauce. I can take the rotisserie chicken breast, some tomato sauce, and sprinkle some Parmesan on it. And I've got a delicious dinner. So by that token too, Parmesan and feta, I tend to keep in my fridge because a little bit added to whether it's a salad or something else, it seems to just make it a little more interesting. I also think sometimes the appeal of the takeout is flavor. So I make sure that in my fridge, I have barbecue sauce, I have hot sauce, I have a couple different kinds of vinegar is also nice. A little bit of sesame oil, because you could just a couple sprinkles of that and all of a sudden you have tons of flavor. Liquid aminos instead of soy sauce, right? Just a little, I'm not that big on the salty things, but the liquid aminos can, again, give me a different flavor. Dijon mustard is a big one. So having enough things in there that I can create some different flavors, all with that same rotisserie chicken, right? Or with that same couple vegetables for the week or the same greens or whatever, then we can change it up.
What is your favorite fitness exercise activity?
So my favorite thing is to combine strength and cardio. So longtime listeners know Physique 57 has been my thing. It's a bar method meets interval training. And I also work out with the A-list, which is kind of similar, more intense generally than Physique, but very similar. And again, all of these formats and the things that they do, for the most part, we're getting the heart pumping for at least a few minutes in the time frame. And I like to combine the strength and the cardio. Every now and then, I crave that really good sweat, and I'll go to SoulCycle or a spin class and try to, get a very different kind of activity. Every now and then, I'll go to a Barry's boot camp or one of those where it pushes me to do something totally different than I normally do. But my favorite is more of an isometric than a plyometric, and that strength and cardio combined.
And does it matter? Is it just a matter of doing whichever one you like the best because then you're actually doing it? Or is it you need to have all of those things? Or
I mean, we do need, the human body needs resistance training, build muscle, cardio, use the heart as a muscle, flexibility. So, stretching so that we have functional muscles and we can reach above our heads, to that top shelf.
To do every single day, stretching.
Exactly. And then balance. So core strength and also balance. Can you stand on one foot and those kinds of things. We need all of those. How you get them, do what you like. And we can play and we can experiment. And what we like now, sometimes we don't like it in a year. That's okay. Yeah.
Okay. What's one wellness habit that made the biggest difference for you?
When I think back to, now I've been coaching for almost 20 years, started in late 2007, and we're in 2026. So it's been a long time. But when I think about back then, what made the absolute biggest difference, it was what I say to everybody, protein and fiber at every meal, and not eating the grains or the bread first. So if we sit down at a restaurant, I'm not eating that bread until there's something else in my system. I mean, listen, every now and then, we're human and whatever, but for the most part, I know this question was for one wellness habit, but it's a toss-up between those two things that made a tremendous difference. But the protein and fiber, for sure, when I think about my food noise, when I think about my own cravings, when I think about feeling like I could breathe and gain weight, right? All of that stuff that I remember so vividly, it's the protein and fiber that changed things for me. 1,000%.
What's your favorite way to reset your mind when life feels overwhelming?
Usually workouts. Usually I need something more intense for that like blood flow and reset. I'm also a sucker for television, so I watch a lot of TV. And then I've had a lot going on lately, and some things that have been really stressful and sort of anxiety ridden. And so in those also the things that have made the biggest difference is not just the intense workout to help me sort of like get that energy out, but the support, the resources, not doing it alone, not figuring out the plan alone, people who have been through it before, sharing their insights, people who have expertise, leaning on these resources. It's just huge. I was actually speaking on a summit today and we were talking about, some of these things and the value of the support.
Yeah. Support system is really important. And that's why the service you offer also in the hub is really important. Everybody going through the same things.
Exactly.
I mean, I'm reading some of the
Love it.
questions myself and I can relate. So,
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
All right, what's the next one?
What's one food you used to avoid but now love because it makes you feel good?
Ooh. So when I answered this question before, the first thing that came to mind was mushrooms. And let me explain, because I don't actually know, not funny mushrooms.
You said that, not me.
I know. More because I remember as a kid, like totally avoiding mushrooms. And then over time, like white button mushrooms became a vegetable that I could add into a salad that I didn't even notice. And so it gave me one more vegetable in there that I didn't even taste, especially if like everything is just chopped up, because I love a lot of things in a salad and, chopped up. So before, when I answered this, I said mushrooms. The other thing that I think about is fat. I grew up in the era of low fat, no fat, right? Like we were all told fat's the problem.
Yep.
And few things to me are more satisfying than nuts or avocado in a salad or really high quality olive oil. So when it comes to like really noticing a difference in how I feel, the quality fat is major.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's your opinion on health and wellness being tied to consumerism, especially on social media?
Nothing like a whammy at the end here. So this is another soapbox for me. And we talked about it a little bit in our episode with the new food pyramid, and some of the latest research on longevity is essentially showing that wealth is one of our top longevity factors, right? Can you afford to purchase quality food? Can you afford to have one of these rings or do the functional testing like we were talking about before, pay out of pocket for things that our, health insurance won't cover? So on some level, what's my opinion of it? I think it's frustrating. I think it's really sad because I believe health is our human right, that we have these human bodies, but no one really teaches us how to take care of them. And I think the way the systems around us are set up, of course, health and wellness is tied to economics and consumerism because the system is set up for that. We don't have a system set up really for health equity. And so it's frustrating, and to change it, I believe requires, I've talked about this a little bit before, but I believe requires changing the incentive structure. So instead of us having to lobby for every single food dye and additive to come out of foods, I believe that we need to start to penalize the companies for every ingredient they use. And the the further from nature, the greater the penalty. We need to shift to make the least healthy things the most expensive and the healthiest things the most economical. And by that token, the other side of this is just because you can pay for things doesn't necessarily mean that they are the answer either. I talk about this every time we talk about supplements, but quality matters. And there is a very well-known supplement that had a prominent Super Bowl ad. And I texted my team during the game and I said, I need to post this on social media. We have to figure out when. But I want to say it here to everybody. If your favorite supplement can afford a Super Bowl ad. How much money do you think you're paying? How much money of the money you're paying do you think is going into the quality of those ingredients? I would prefer the one without the Super Bowl ad, with the ingredients that I can verify are actually making a difference. Just me.
Makes sense.
All right. I think we're on the last one, right?
We are. This is the last one, and it's a good one.
Okay.
What are the top wellness trends for 2026?
Ooh. All right. So some of these I'm already seeing. So NAD and glutathione are all over my social media. So glutathione is the body's master antioxidant. NAD plus is sort of a longevity factor, like it works at a cellular level for almost anti-aging and energy and, mental capacity. It has a whole host of benefits. I've been working with things, both of these for years and years. I don't know why. Sort of NAD was like in the zeitgeist and then kind of quieted down and now it's back for whatever reason. Again, let's support our body's natural pathways and processes. So supplementation, and then of course there's always something. So right now it seems to be NAD and glutathione. Fiber, we still see the protein piece, but I'm seeing fiber more and more coming up, to which I caution everybody, fiber powders are not necessarily our answer. Fiber-packed gummies are not necessarily our best answer. Again, quality matters, variety matters. We want to be careful with some of that stuff. I'm also seeing a lot of nervous system focus, and specifically like devices for nervous system regulation. So
What devices?
There's one called Neuropod that I keep seeing, and then I'm seeing a lot of competitors to the Neuropod too, where it's like things you wear that stimulate the vagus nerve.
Oh.
I think there's two more things. I think one is we're going to see over the course of 2026 the pendulum swing back from the biohackers and the extremes. I think we're going to see a swing back toward consistency, back toward being kinder to ourselves, understanding that we don't have to be some of these tech bros living in a bubble in order to be well. That has trade-offs also. And then I think the other piece that I'm already seeing coming into the conversation, but I also think it's going to keep coming up more and more, and that is that everything is connected. For even our more traditional medical professionals, and everybody to start talking about, like, just because you have a diagnosis doesn't mean that everything else is fine, right? The entire body is connected. So if we're seeing something show up somewhere, it's only a matter of time until it shows up somewhere else too.
Yeah.
Everything is connected. So those are my predictions.
That song we learned.
Yeah, exactly. So we'll have to come back at the end of 2026 and see if I was right in any of those.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, let's do that.
Awesome. All right, friends, those were the questions from our Happy Healthy Hub. If you love that, join us over there. On Friday, in this week's Nutrition Nugget bite-sized bonus episode, we're talking about 0-calorie drinks. So when things are marketed to us as having 0 calories, especially when they're drinks, they can be very, very tempting. The question is, though, with 0 calories, does that mean they have 0 impact on our bodies? So we're going to talk about it on Friday in this week's bite-sized bonus episode. So be sure wherever you're listening, click the plus sign or the follow button, and then your app will alert you when this goes live on Friday morning. Well, as always, everybody, I'm your host, Jenn Trepeck. Connect with me on Instagram or all social media. I am at Jenn Trepeck, JENNTREPECK. Website is asaladwithasideofries.com. Pick your platform, send a message. I truly love hearing from you, your takeaways, your ideas, your questions. It's also the easiest way to learn more about working with me as your health coach. Jennifer, thank you again for joining me for this one.
Thank you. It was great. I had fun.
Awesome.
And I learned a lot.
Yay! That's the best. And of course, everybody, if you are not already a member, I invite you to the Happy Healthy Hub. You'll go to asaladwithasideofries.com/membership. This shows your support for this podcast, this community, but most importantly, it supports your health. On top of access to the community board where we can interact, ask and answer questions like this week's episode, and so much more. You get discounts, curated content, and then, of course, this week's recipe for burger bowls. So until next week, remember, if you like these kinds of conversations, if you like hearing the answers to your pressing questions, join us in the Happy Healthy Hub. Well, friends, that's it for today's episode of Salad with a Side of Fries. Congratulations for making yourself and your health a priority. Thanks so much for joining us. Be sure to click subscribe or follow on your favorite podcast platform, share us with a friend, and we'll be back next week. Always remember, you deserve it and you are worth it. Happy healthy.